The first Republican presidential primary debate is just 4 days away, and it turns out at least one candidate who qualified may already be a no-show. Two sources familiar telling NBC News that Donald Trump is sitting this debate out, opting instead to sit down with Tucker Carlson as a way of counter-programming the debate hosted by Fox News. Meanwhile, his Republican opponents are falling all over themselves to make an impression on voters without attacking the twice-impeached, four-time indicted former president. One strategy? A quote-unquote pro-DeSantis super PAC posted a memo online highlighting some must-dos for Florida Governor Ron DeSantis that include defend Donald Trump and show emotion. Well, he'll fail that one miserably. Joining me now is my Saturday morning Power Political panel. I'm calling it the Cafecito Corner, really. Former Florida Congressman Carlos Curbelo and Democratic pollster Fernand Amandi, both are MSNBC political analysts. I mean, it is the Cafecito Corner, but I don't have any cafecito for you. Gentlemen, I mean, we're on the cusp of the first Republican primary debate. Fernand, let's start with you. The DeSantis campaign releasing a statement about that plan. Quote, "We were not aware of it prior to the article." Are you joking? What is that?
You know, it's again DeSantis showing how awkward he is and how dumb he thinks the voters, the press, and the media are. This is a time-honored tactic, by the way. Part of the reason that the super PAC put it on the website is because they can't legally coordinate it. So by quote-unquote publicly releasing the information, then the people on the campaign side could go over there and understand what the super PAC research is showing. That is accumulation, by the way, of research and polling and focus groups that the super PAC has done and paid for from the super PAC dollars.
Wait. Millions spent to tell DeSantis, quote, show emotion? That's what you're saying?
But that's his problem, Katie. I mean, he's an animatron, and as you've seen, he is unwilling to do what needs to be done to win this primary, which is to take on the big dog, Donald Trump. So unless he shows that emotion that he's actually challenging Trump, which the advice is actually the opposite of what they're saying, I think it's, again, a candidacy that's going nowhere.
Carlos, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but hear me out for a hot second. So nobody's going to attack Donald Trump, right? He's got this huge lead, presumptive nominee for the GOP. Is it possible that they're actually being quite Machiavellian about this? You're not going to attack him. Let's just say, God forbid, he wins in November 2024. But he ends up in prison, so he can't serve. Are these people actually gunning for that VP slot so then maybe they can slide into the Oval Office? I'm not kidding you.
When you think about the campaigns that some of these candidates are running, that is actually a good theory because
totally crazy.
You cannot defeat Donald Trump by following him. If you want to beat him, you have to take him on. You have to take the fight to him. And that doesn't mean you have to take the anti-Trump lane like Chris Christie, right? That's difficult. But you can distinguish yourself, and you should, because otherwise, why is anyone going to choose Donald Trump, anyone but Donald Trump, if you're just imitating Donald Trump? So, look, I think maybe for the first time in a long time, Donald Trump has done something rational here, not going to this debate. Because when I was a primary candidate and I had a 30, 40, 50-point lead against my opponent, I didn't go debate. I didn't want to give them that opportunity to get them attention and let them take some shots at me. So I think Trump's doing a smart thing here.
Yeah, but Fernand, what if he does end up at the debate? So there's some chatter in the Trump world that he actually might show up to the debate. Because it always has to be about him, and everybody's expecting him to sit down with Tucker Carlson and hang out with him. But you know what? I mean, Tucker Carlson's numbers haven't been that great since he left Fox News. So what happens if Donald Trump comes rolling in on that stage?
Well, Trump is erratic and undisciplined enough to do the stupid thing. We've seen him do it over and over again over these last 8 years. But look, I think his advisors are going to have to chain him to the wall or something like that because there is absolutely no benefit. We've actually talked about it on this program before, Katie. For Trump, the best thing to do is not go, because even by not going, the debate is all about him. Everyone is going to talk about Trump, and the specter of him not being there is going to hang over it and define the very terms of what happened. So a shrewd move, I don't mean to normalize the guy that's been indicted 4 times, it's going to be indicted maybe a 5th, twice impeached, but a shrewd political, tactical move to just stay away from the debate and keep watching his numbers hold steady with that 35-point lead.
So, Carlos, one person who hasn't been indicted is Vivek Ramaswamy. I keep on scratching my head on why his numbers have improved so much. He's actually narrowed the gap between himself and Ron DeSantis. He's now, he being Ramaswamy, squarely in 3rd place behind DeSantis, but narrowed that gap to now just 5 points. So now Ramaswamy is in, according to this attack memo, this debate strategy memo for DeSantis. Now Ramaswamy is squarely in the sights of DeSantis. What's up with Vivek Ramaswamy?
Look, the guy has a lot of talent. He is extremely eloquent. He's a great orator. He's striking all the right notes with the Republican primary electorate. He's drawing a lot of attention to himself, and a lot of people find him to be likable and compelling. I have some friends who are more libertarian-leaning, and they actually like Ramaswamy. So he's the type of candidate that you really have to keep your eye on. But again, even with him, I'm not sure if he's running for president or for vice president, because he has been one of Donald Trump's biggest defenders out on the campaign trail. So at some point, Ramaswamy, you'd think if he's growing in the polls, he's going to try to take Trump on so that he can actually have a shot at winning this thing.
So, Fernand, we're always honest on this show, and some criticism that we get is...
Too honest.
Listen, and you know what? And some criticism I get and others get on TV is you give too much oxygen to Donald Trump. Why do you talk about him so much? My answer is because he is a very real threat to democracy, because we've seen what he's capable of doing. Do you think there's any credence to this idea that perhaps we should actually take the oxygen out of the room and not talk about him as much as we talk about? Because clearly he dominates the conversation.
I mean, I understand the thinking, but it's absurd. You see every public opinion poll now with the head-to-head of Trump and Biden. Trump is within 2 or 3 points. In some cases, the race is tied. He is absolutely the de facto Republican nominee for 2024 based on what we're seeing. And as the last Republican president, he's still ahead of the party. So the idea that we're going to like shame him into existence by ignoring his presence, that's called putting your head in the sand. That's not making sure you understand the very existential threat that he does represent to American democracy, Katie, that you described. So I don't think you can ignore him.
On the flip side, Carlos, should there be more from incumbent President Joe Biden about the 4th indictment that Donald Trump has? Should there be more from the administration saying we are rule of law, we're not indicted, we're, holding strong. Look at the amazing things that we're doing for you, America. Because sometimes I feel like people aren't listening to it. No matter how much we try to promote it as well and talk about it, sometimes people just aren't seeing it.
Katie, I think Joe Biden and his team have become very lazy. They have become stagnant. I think this whole Hawaii ordeal really doesn't look good. Joe Biden has to understand that even though they might get the candidate they want, which is Donald Trump, that's the opponent they want, that doesn't mean it's going to be easy. And they should take nothing for granted. If they're going to start taking things for granted, they should just call Hillary Clinton and ask her how that worked out. So the Biden campaign, the White House, they need to take Donald Trump seriously, and they need to get out there and lead and show that Joe Biden is capable of serving another term, because he is not the strongest incumbent going into this campaign.
You disagree, though, I can tell, Fernand.
Yeah, I mean, I do, because Joe Biden's record, again, this is the most accomplished president, regardless of party, in 60 years. What he has done for the American economy. Katie, think about the disaster that he inherited on January 20th, 2021, and now we have the strongest economy in the world. The stock market is flirting with record highs, unemployment all-time low, created more jobs than any American president in history. All he's got to do is sell his record, defend his record, and make the case, like you said earlier, that the other side is not just a throwback to Republican politics. It is the end of democracy if we let this MAGA movement recapture the White House again. Until that fever is broken, those are the stakes. If he makes that case, he's going to be reelected easily.
Thank you for joining our Cafecito Corner today. Fernand Demandi and Carlos Curbelo, it's always such a good conversation.
We need another bet here so we can actually have Cafecito.
Well,
and Katie, we're in Miami. It's Cafecito and Pastelitos. You got to do the two.
Croquetas, y café con leche.
Not too much.
Not too much. Still